Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters of faith, there are moments in life when everything you trusted begins to shake. Jobs fail, relationships strain, nations tremble, and in those moments the question is not where are we? The question is where does God stand? And I came to declare today, here stands God right in the middle of your difficult times. When the doctor's report shakes your peace, when the bills outnumber your income, when prayers seem unanswered and nights feel longer than days, God has not moved. People may walk away, doors may close, but God is not intimidated by your storm. Faith was never designed for easy seasons. Faith shows its strength when everything says, give up. Yet your spirit says, hold on. Some of you are confused because God didn't stop the trouble. But hear this clearly, God does not always stop the storm. Sometimes he reveals himself in it. The fire didn't burn them. The lions didn't eat them. The prison couldn't hold them, because God was already standing there before they arrived. Do not mistake delay for denial. Do not confuse silence with absence. Just because you can't feel him does not mean he has left you. What you are facing is not punishment. It is preparation. Pressure is not sent to break you. It is sent to shape you. The very thing you thought would destroy you is the thing God is using to develop strength, endurance, and authority inside you. Men of faith are not defined by how loud they shout in victory, but by how firmly they stand in adversity. Stand when it hurts. Stand when it's lonely. Stand when it doesn't make sense. Because if God carried you through the last storm, if he healed you before, if he opened doors no one could shut, he will do it again. So lift your head, tighten your grip on faith. And remember this truth, when everything else falls apart, here stands God. When everything around you begins to collapse, when the foundations you trusted start to crack, and when the world you know no longer feels secure, there is one unshakable truth that must be settled in your spirit. God is still standing. Difficult times have a way of exposing what is temporary and what is eternal. Careers can disappear overnight. Relationships can weaken. Health can fail. And systems that once felt solid can suddenly crumble. Yet in the middle of all that instability, God remains exactly where he has always been, upright, sovereign, and unmovable. History shows us that human strength has limits. Kingdoms rise and fall, economies fluctuate, and leaders change, but God does not panic when things fall apart. What feels like chaos to us is not confusion to him. When the ground beneath your feet seems to give way, God is not scrambling to recover control. He is not surprised by your struggle, nor is he overwhelmed by your circumstances. He stands firm while everything else shakes, reminding us that our security was never meant to be found in people, possessions, or positions, but in him alone. Many people discover God most clearly when they have lost everything else to hold on to. When the familiar supports are stripped away, faith is no longer a theory, it becomes survival. In those moments, you realize that God does not need favorable conditions to be faithful. He does not need the storm to calm down in order to remain God. Even when doors close and voices fall silent, his presence remains constant. He stands in the fire, in the valley, and in the uncertainty, proving that he is not dependent on your comfort to be powerful in your life. There is a reason why difficult seasons often reveal the strongest faith. When everything is going well, it is easy to praise. But when everything is falling apart and you still trust, that is when faith shows its depth. God allows certain things to fall so you can see that He is the only one who will never fall. The collapse around you is not always a sign of defeat. Sometimes it is a divine reset, pulling your attention away from what cannot last and redirecting it toward what never fails. You may feel like you are standing alone, but you are not abandoned. God is standing with you, even when you do not feel Him, even when your prayers seem unanswered. His silence does not mean His absence. He is working in ways you cannot see, strengthening your spirit while the situation tests your endurance. What you are walking through is not greater than the God who is standing with you in it. When everything else falls, God stands as your refuge, your anchor, and your foundation. He stands to remind you that your life is not over, your purpose is not canceled, and your future is still secure. The shaking you are experiencing is not meant to destroy you. It is meant to drive you deeper into trust. And as long as God is standing, and He always is, you will not be overcome. Faith is never fully revealed when life is comfortable. Comfort does not demand courage, and ease does not require trust. It is only when life presses in on you, when answers are delayed and outcomes are uncertain, that faith steps out of theory and into reality. Difficult seasons do not create faith. They expose it. What you truly believe about God is uncovered not in moments of applause, but in moments of pressure. Crisis becomes the proving ground where faith either deepens or dissolves. When everything is going well, it is easy to say you trust God. But when the ground shifts beneath your feet, when prayers seem unanswered and strength feels exhausted, faith is forced to speak without evidence. In these moments, belief is no longer supported by circumstances, but sustained by conviction. Crisis strips away shallow confidence and replaces it with something stronger, dependence. Faith that survives hardship is not fragile. It is forged, shaped by fire, and strengthened by resistance. Pressure has a way of refining what comfort never could. Just as metal is strengthened through heat, faith matures through struggle. The uncertainty you are facing is not meant to destroy you, it is meant to develop you. God uses hardship to deepen trust, to remove self-reliance, and to teach you how to lean fully on Him. What feels like breaking is often becoming. The weight you are carrying today is building endurance for tomorrow. In crisis, faith learns to walk without sight. You may not know how things will turn out, but faith teaches you to keep moving forward anyway. It chooses trust over fear and obedience over understanding. This kind of faith does not ask for guarantees. It stands on promise. Even when emotions waver and logic fails, faith holds on not because the situation looks good, but because God remains faithful. Hard seasons also reveal the purpose behind belief. Faith is not simply about getting through difficulty, it is about who you become while enduring it. Crisis reshapes character, strengthens resolve, and clarifies priorities. What once mattered fades in the presence of what truly lasts. Through struggle, faith grows roots, anchoring itself deeper into truth. It becomes less about what you can control and more about who you trust. There are moments when faith feels weak, when doubt whispers louder than hope. Yet even fragile faith, when placed in strong hands, is enough. God does not require perfection. He responds to persistence. Every step taken in uncertainty is an act of faith. Every decision to keep believing is a declaration of trust. The fire does not consume true faith, it purifies it. When the crisis passes, and it will, you will not be the same. Faith that has been tested carries authority, resilience, and depth. It no longer depends on circumstances for validation. It stands firm, knowing that what was once shaken has now been strengthened. What was forged in difficulty becomes a testimony of endurance, proving that faith is not built in comfort, but refined in crisis. There are seasons in life when it feels as though heaven has gone quiet. You pray, you wait, you believe, yet nothing seems to change. The silence can be unsettling, even painful, and it often leads people to assume that God has stepped away. But silence is not the same as absence. Just because you cannot hear him does not mean he is not near. Some of God's deepest work happens in moments when he chooses not to speak loudly, but to act quietly. Silence tests trust in a way that noise never could. When there are clear signs, quick answers, and visible breakthroughs, faith feels easier. But when there are no signals, no confirmations, and no immediate results, belief must rest on relationship rather than reassurance. God's silence invites you to lean on what you know about him, not just what you can feel from him. It asks you to trust his character, even when his voice seems distant. Often, silence is not a lack of response, but a different form of communication. A teacher does not speak during an exam, not because they have abandoned the students, but because it is time for what has been learned to be applied. In the same way, God sometimes steps back vocally so that faith can step forward practically. What he has already spoken is meant to sustain you in the quiet. The absence of new instruction does not mean the previous guidance has lost its power. God's silence also protects you from depending on signs instead of substance. If every prayer were answered instantly and every decision came with audible direction, faith would never mature. Silence stretches spiritual endurance. It strengthens discernment. It teaches you to listen more deeply, not just for words, but for wisdom. In the quiet, your sensitivity grows, and your reliance on God becomes less emotional and more anchored. There is also purpose being formed in the unseen. While you are waiting, God is working. He is arranging circumstances, shaping outcomes, and preparing both you and the situation for what comes next. What feels like inactivity is often divine preparation. Just because you do not see movement does not mean nothing is happening. Some of the most important changes occur beneath the surface, where roots grow strong before fruit appears. Silence can feel lonely, but it is often the space where intimacy is developed. Without constant noise, distractions fade and focus sharpens. In the stillness, your heart becomes more aware of God's presence, even without words. You begin to recognize that his nearness is not dependent on constant communication. His presence is steady even when his voice is quiet. When the silence eventually breaks, you will realize it was not empty. It was shaping you, strengthening you, and preparing you for clarity and confidence. You will look back and see that God never left. He simply chose a quieter way to work. His silence was not neglect, but intention, and through it all he remained present, faithful, and actively involved, proving that even in the quiet, God is still there. There are moments in life when pain feels overwhelming, when circumstances seem designed to tear you apart rather than lift you up. In those seasons, it is easy to believe that suffering is pointless or cruel. But what often feels like breaking is actually positioning. The very experiences that shake you to your core are frequently the ones that align you for a greater purpose. What looks like loss on the surface can be preparation beneath it. Adversity has a way of rearranging priorities. When everything is going well, comfort can keep you stagnant. Pain, however, forces movement. It pushes you out of familiar patterns and into places of growth you might never have chosen willingly. What you endure shapes how you think, how you respond, and how you lead. Struggle strips away excess and reveals what truly matters, leaving you stronger and more focused than before. Being broken does not mean being defeated. Brokenness often creates space for humility, clarity, and transformation. It softens pride and sharpens compassion. When you have walked through difficulty, you carry a depth that cannot be taught. Your pain becomes insight, and your wounds become wisdom. God often uses broken seasons to prepare people for roles that require empathy, resilience, and understanding. There is positioning that happens when doors close. Rejection, disappointment, and failure can redirect you toward places you never considered. What feels like being pushed back may actually be a divine shift forward. Some opportunities only appear after others are removed. When one chapter ends painfully, it often creates room for a greater calling to emerge. The setback becomes the setup. What breaks you also teaches you how to stand differently. After hardship, you no longer rely on surface strength. You develop endurance that comes from having survived what once seemed unbearable. The pressure you faced reshapes your posture, giving you stability in future storms. You learn to carry responsibility with maturity and confidence, because you know what it means to be tested. Even when you feel weakened, something stronger is forming within you. God uses difficulty to align your character with your calling. The struggle refines motives, sharpens vision, and prepares you for impact. Without these seasons, success could overwhelm you, and influence could distort you. The breaking is not meant to end you. It is meant to equip you. One day, you will look back and realize that the pain you resented became the path that positioned you. The moments that nearly broke your spirit were the very ones that shaped your strength. What you survived was not wasted. It placed you where you needed to be, carrying depth, wisdom, and purpose that could only be formed through adversity. Pressure is often misunderstood. It is usually seen as something to escape, something that threatens to overwhelm and destroy. Yet pressure, when guided by purpose, has the power to reveal what already exists within. God does not apply pressure to harm his people, but to uncover the strength, character, and calling he has placed inside them. What feels heavy is not meant to crush you, it is meant to bring out what has been hidden. Life has a way of increasing the weight when growth is required. Responsibility expands, expectations rise, and challenges intensify. In these moments, pressure exposes where dependence truly lies. It removes false confidence and replaces it with authentic strength. Under pressure, weaknesses surface, but so does resilience. You begin to discover capabilities you never knew you possessed, simply because the situation demanded more from you. Pressure forces focus. When everything is easy, distractions multiply. But when the weight increases, clarity sharpens. You learn what matters and what does not. God often uses pressure to strip away unnecessary attachments, habits, and distractions that prevent forward movement. What remains is purpose refined by urgency and intention. In the press, vision becomes clearer because there is no room for excess. There is also a shaping that happens under pressure. Just as raw material is molded into something useful through force and heat, character is shaped through difficulty. Patience, discipline, endurance, and wisdom are not developed in comfort. They are formed when pressure tests your response. Each challenge becomes an opportunity to grow stronger rather than more bitter, to become refined rather than resentful. Pressure also activates what has been dormant. Gifts that remained unused in calm seasons often emerge when demand increases. Leadership rises in crisis. Courage surfaces when fear is confronted. Creativity appears when solutions are required. God uses pressure to awaken purpose, pulling potential from places you never accessed before. The stress you feel may be the signal that something within you is being called forth. It is important to understand that pressure is temporary, but what it produces is lasting. The season may feel intense, but it will not define you forever. What will endure is the growth it produces. When the pressure lifts, you are left with strength, maturity, and insight that could not have been gained any other way. You are no longer the same person who entered the challenge. Rather than resisting pressure, learning to endure it changes everything. When you trust that God is working through it, pressure becomes purposeful instead of paralyzing. It no longer feels like an enemy, but a tool. And in time, you realize that what once felt unbearable became the very process that shaped you into who you were meant to be. Memory has a powerful role in sustaining faith. When you face uncertainty, doubt often tries to convince you that this situation is different, that this time there will be no way through. But faith is strengthened when you remember where you have been and how you survived. Every past victory stands as evidence that God has been faithful before, and what he has done once, he is fully capable of doing again. There were moments when the outcome looked impossible, when the odds were against you and the pressure felt unbearable. Yet, somehow, you made it through. Doors opened unexpectedly, strength came at the right time, and provision arrived when you had nothing left. Those moments were not accidents. They were reminders that God was present, active, and powerful. Remembering them is not nostalgia. It is reinforcement for present belief. Fear often thrives on forgetfulness. When you forget past deliverance, current challenges appear larger than they truly are. But recalling previous breakthroughs restores perspective. It shifts your focus from what is threatening you to what has already been conquered. The same power that carried you through then has not diminished. God's ability is not limited by time, nor is his faithfulness reduced by changing circumstances. Each challenge you overcome builds a record of trust. You may not have recognized it at the time, but every trial survived became a foundation for future confidence. The strength you lean on today was formed in yesterday's struggles. What once required effort now comes with assurance, because experience has taught you that God can be trusted. Faith grows not only through hope, but through history. Even when situations look unfamiliar, the source of help remains the same. God does not run out of solutions. He does not grow tired of rescuing, restoring, and renewing. What feels new to you is not new to him. He has guided you before through uncertainty, confusion, and fear, and his guidance remains available now. The method may change, but the faithfulness does not. Trusting again requires courage. Past victories do not eliminate present fear, but they do weaken its grip. When you choose to believe again, you are not ignoring reality. You are anchoring yourself in proven truth. Faith looks forward with confidence because it remembers backward with clarity. It understands that survival was not coincidence, but care. As you move forward, let remembrance fuel expectation. The same God who brought you through heartbreak, loss, struggle, and waiting is still with you. What lies ahead is not greater than what has already been overcome. And as long as God remains the same, and he does what he did before is not the end of the story, but the foundation for what he will do again.